Panasonic, the heart of your system.
I'm Leo Walder for Kit Guru. This laptop is Gigabyte Aero 15X9, which sounds much like the previous generation of Aero 15, which was the Aero 15X V8. However, they've mucked around with the numbering system. So this is the Aero 15 hyphen or dash X9. It's X because it is Core i7, and then there's also going to be a Y series, so Aero 15Y bloody bloody, which will be Core i9s. It's an absolute swine getting your head around what how these systems work. But the big news is RTX graphics, RTX 2070 Max Q. The standout laptop for last year for me was, and it came as a complete surprise, the Gigabyte Aero 15X V8. So 8th gen Intel hardware and GTX 10 series graphics Max Q, i.e. clocked down to keep heat and such like to a minimum. Hertz performance naturally, but when you've got a thin light chassis, you have to make compromises. The Aero 15X was good. It was marginally, and I do mean marginally, better than the MSI GS65, a very similar laptop. Somehow or other, Gigabyte just snuck the performance crown from them with these two very similar, very slender laptops. The Aero 15X9 is the bottom SKU of 5 laptops. So this laptop has a 144Hz panel, 15.6 inch, Core i7, so 6 core 12 thread, 16 gig of RAM in a single module. The other 4 laptops in this series all have dual channel memory, Windows Pro, and it's an IPS panel with that 144Hz refresh rate. The price is £2,399, probably the same in dollars and euros wherever you might travel. And that's about 200 more than the previous generation laptop. Now the thing is, the SSD is 1 terabyte in size. The previous one was 500 gig or 512 gig. So you get a slightly larger amount of storage. And here's the thing, it would be nice to think that year on year you get the next jump in whatever hardware and you pay the same money for more. But it doesn't seem to work that way, so more memory costs you more, a larger SSD costs you more, stepping up the graphics definitely costs you more. When it comes to the ports and connectors, it's actually slightly more interesting than it first appears. Kensington lock, power connector, 2 USB 3.0 Type A's, 1 Type C, SD card reader, Ethernet, another USB 3.0 Type A, HDMI 2, a Type C and a headphone jack, except not, because those Type A's, one of them is actually a Gen 2, i.e. USB 3.1 in our parlance, while the other 2 are indeed Gen 1s. And one of the Type C's is USB 3.1 Gen 2, while the other Type C is actually a mini DisplayPort. In terms of accessories, you get this 230 watt power adapter. It does not have a USB port, as we have seen on certain Gigabyte power adapters in the past. So it's just a power adapter. And you also get in the accessory pack this, unusually, which is a thermal pad. Most unusual, in fact I've never seen that on a laptop before, and the idea is when you go inside the laptop, here we have the Intel 760p SSD. Should you wish to install a second SSD in the empty M.2 slot, you put that thermal pad on to transfer some heat out to the chassis. This at the very least shows that Gigabyte is entirely relaxed about you opening the chassis, going inside, so you can do either SSD or memory upgrades, which is certainly an unusual move by a laptop manufacturer. And then moving up through the product stack, so this is $2,399, $2,400 in round money. There's a model at $2,700, which is RTX 2070 Core i7. There's a model which is RTX 2070 Core i9, that's going to cost you $3,300. There's an RTX 2080 Core i7 model. You can see what Gigabyte's doing here, offering all things to all men for $3,200. And then the king of the heap, and I still can barely believe I'm reading these numbers, which is the all singing or dancing RTX 2080 with Core i9, 32 gig of RAM, 2 terabyte SSD, £4,500. $4,499 if we're being really pedantic. That's an immense amount of money. And the thing being is, RTX graphics, we're talking max Q, so you're not going to get the same level of performance as the desktop. That's just a fact. So it's a really smart laptop. It has changed very slightly from the previous generation, the layout of the keyboard and such, like the styling and so on. But in terms of weight and the dimensions, it's the same. It is marginally, it's been tinkered with here and there. It does look different. It looks nicer. I'm still not best pleased about the keyboard layout. The fact the Del key is inboard and the numpad and such, like I can't be doing with that. But that apparently is an international thing. It means that certain keys can be in the same location globally. So that aspect of the keyboard I find slightly vexing, but you know, that's a fairly minor thing. And then we get to the real big deals as Gigabyte sees it, certainly, which is that sticker there, this software here, that icon there. The sticker is significant because what they've done is they've decided, and this might sound fairly obvious, what Gigabyte's doing is they are sticking with the same suppliers of hardware across the piece. So the panels all come from LG, the memory all comes from Samsung, and where they can, the internal hardware comes from Intel in terms of processor and chipset. And then there's a bit of funny business going on with the Wi-Fi, which is actually from Killer. And the thing is that Killer does Rivet Networks. They do they use 2 or 3 different manufacturers of a Wi-Fi chip. However, the Killer in this is powered by Intel. So the significant thing there is that instead of adopting the sort of strategy taken by some smaller manufacturers where essentially they'll buy whatever batch of parts makes sense on that day of the week. They need some panels, they'll get them from this person here. They need some watts, they'll go to that person there. In this case, Gigabyte is sticking with the same suppliers. So any particular family of laptops, they know what the components are, which means they should be able to guarantee reliability. They should be able to sort out spare parts more easily. And we've all had this where you bust a phone or something, and it turns out, or a laptop, and it turns out you've got a choice of 2 different screens depending on precisely which model you've got. Until you look at, say, the connector or some other aspect of it, you don't necessarily know what is going on inside. From the outside it'll look the same, inside quite different. So Gigabyte's made changes there. They've changed their control center software. It's now a unified whole, so you want to do your RGBness, that's all good. And then we have this icon here, which is their AI feature. This is the feature that was, and I'm going to be blunt about this, it was mocked at CES by Linus, who said, what was it, the world's worst demo or the worst demo at CES or some such. The idea is that you right click on that software and you then get this pop-up and you can go for the green version, which is AI Edge, which means it works within the laptop. The red AI, which is the cloud version, means it talks to the internets, and it controls sort of a combination of power and speeds and fan speeds to give you a balance of performance, power draw, temperatures and cooling. And then we also have another mode there, which was, oh, there's a demo. And this is what we were seeing at CES. And essentially they've made a rod for their own backs here. What's going on is the system sorts itself out, is what they say. There's a feedback thing going on, and it monitors what goes on and it then adjusts settings. So here we have split screen is the idea, and a game and or rendering, and you get better performance with the AI feature. This, as I say, is the demo that was mocked by Linus. And the reason is quite self-evident, really, which is, for one thing, if you're going to call something AI, it ought to be good, like self-driving cars or a robot surgeon, and that's fairly entry level. Gigabyte tells us that they ask permission from the user before it engages the AI, and it's not sending off your data, it's talking about settings and performance, and I've got no trouble believing all of that, no trouble whatsoever. But in terms of how often it's communicating with the cloud, and obviously the idea is you have a pool of people who've used, for argument's sake, Adobe Photoshop or Counter-Strike, whatever it might be, and you look at a bunch of different settings and you say, right, these settings are optimal. Clearly the system needs to decide what counts as better than another setup, and then it can presumably compare those two setups and it can say, yes, this is the better setup, use that setup, ramp up fan speeds or down or whatever it might be. The parameters that it's using and adjusting and what it counts as success or failure is entirely opaque. But clearly in that little run through there where it's showing a split screen and you get 60 frames rather than 40 something frames, obviously that's better. All other things being equal. Are they equal? Does it come down to image quality? 1,000 questions. And the fact is, in my testing, I found zero benefit from the AI. Going through the reviewer's guide, they were claiming 3 to 4% improvement from using the AI. So basically zero. So at the moment, there's a feature that they're touting at CES as a world's first using Microsoft Azure Cloud. Okie dokie, right now, effectively it doesn't work. Now, speaking to Gigabyte, they seem very clear this is going to come down to obviously the cloud knowing more about what's going on. So the more people that have this laptop use this feature, the more information there'll be, the better chance there is that it's going to give you revised settings that give you an improvement. That makes sense. Also, drivers. RTX graphics, they are so dependent on Nvidia coming up with the revised drivers that it's just not funny. This whole RTX on and DLSS, that's entirely in the hands of Nvidia. It just is. So the AI feature, which is the world's first bloody breaking new ground, at the moment it doesn't work, or it has the minimal impact if you want to be really diplomatic. In time, it may well make a difference. Right now, not. Moving on, the laptop itself is very similar to the previous gen, apart from the fact it's got RTX graphics rather than GTX. It seems to me, judging by the temp figures, that what Nvidia has done is they've ramped up the cooling, and I think when it's working hard, the fans do seem to my ears to be a tad louder than previously. I think they've ramped up the fan speed such that idle temps are about the same as before. Working hard, the CPU is cooler and the graphics are slightly warmer. I think Gigabyte's taking this action because the RTX Max-Q graphics are slightly more toasty than the previous GTX graphics, Max-Q to Max-Q. And even though these graphics are running slower than the desktop version at 1500 megahertz, whereas you'd expect the desktop graphics to approach 2 gigahertz, that's about 100 megahertz faster than the previous GTX graphics. And then there's the great unknown about the tensor cores and the whole thing. Let's not get into that, because right now we've got a fundamental issue, which is that ray tracing requires lots of grunty graphics. There are very few. As we know, we've got Battlefield 5, we've got some demos at the moment, and we've got the Port Royal benchmark from, it's now UL, the 3D Mark company. And that's obviously a thing that's going to be coming in time. But right now you require loads of grunt, and then you need DLSS to return the hit from ray tracing. And the thing is that you really want to use a higher resolution screen to get the benefits of ray tracing, so you can then bump up the res with DLSS so it'll render at 1080 or whatever, and then output at 1440 or even 4K. The snag here is this panel, this very nice panel, this 144Hz IPS panel is 1080. There's a fairly simple way to illustrate the conundrum of RTX graphics on a laptop with a 1080p panel, which is if we go to the elevator demo, which is part of the Star Wars reflections thing Nvidia's been showing lots, and we open it, and it crashes because the minimum resolution is 1440p. This panel can't do 1440p. Many laptops can't do 1440p. And the snag is therefore, you want to get ray tracing, you want to demo it, good luck with that. You simply cannot see the benefit. It may be doing ray tracing in Port Royal, but it just looks like a pretty picture. Now, if you've got a whacking great big TV, what are the BFDD or DG screens that are showing 80 inches or some such? Yeah, you're showing ray tracing on one of those fellas. Yeah, okie dokie. This, no. Ray tracing plays no part in this. But here's the real problem, the fundamental problem. You take this laptop, which, as I say, is very similar to the Aero 15X V8, very similar, except it's got RTX graphics. The snag is we know full well Intel's going to be releasing 9th gen CPUs for laptops in Q2. Whether that's going to be April the 1st, whether it's going to be for Computex, we're not entirely certain, but during the next few months they will be coming out with new processors. My understanding is the best word I can use, is that the core processors are up to and including Core i7 are unlikely to change fundamentally. So my guess is that this 6-core processor, when it jumps from being an 8th gen to a 9th gen, it's going to be the same processor. That's my guess, but I don't know it for a fact. The i9, on the other hand, I fully expect that fella to be given some extra woomph, some extra 9th gen love. So if you're looking right now at buying an 8th gen Intel processor Core i9, the sensible approach is to hold off for a few months to see what they do when they bring 9th gen to the mobile market. As things stand, I think you're safe if you want to buy an 8th gen Core i7 with RTX graphics combo. I think you're safe, but I don't know you're safe. And when you're talking about a purchase that's past the £2,000 mark, in this case £2,400, but potentially you're spending £3,000 depending on the exact spec of model you buy, that's risky. Still, if you're prepared to spend money based on my fervent hope and expectation, and it's in no way solid information, if you're happy doing that, that's great, that's really lovely. But I'm not sure I would be confident spending money on that basis, so I don't really know why you would be confident. Yeah. So we have a combo of 8th gen 6-core processor from Intel. We've got RTX graphics, we've got a lovely panel, a really nice chassis, good cooling, it's thin, it's got decent ports and connections, it works well. The AI software at the moment, no, that needs some work before it's actually going to start delivering the goods. And incidentally, if you're wondering why this RGB keyboard is dark at the moment, that's actually because the AI software, humorously enough, interacts in a bad way with it. There is a software update that's due to fix that. It was actually on the way to us, and Chinese New Year's got in the way. So the fact this keyboard is dark rather than doing RGBness is just a software snafu, and in a sense that kind of epitomizes what's going on with the AI feature. So the laptop itself is good. RTX graphics are here. This laptop is an update of a previous laptop we liked a great deal. However, the key feature, the AI at the moment, you can ignore it. It is just not there. And as to RTX graphics on mobile, we need driver updates from Nvidia to deliver more performance, which I'm quite certain is waiting to be unlocked, because at the moment these graphics are so close to GTX 1070 Max-Q that it's a real surprise, and that's obviously no basis to spend your money. Tricky, tricky, tricky. So, one laptop and many conundrums. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, give it a thumbs down. If you want more from Kit Guru, click to subscribe. Hit the bell button to tell you about new videos as they become available, because we like subscribers. I'm Leo Warder for Kit Guru. This is Gigabyte Aero 15X9